Brahmanandam, Paramasukadam, Kevalam Yaramurtim, Dvandvatitam, Ganganasadrisham, Tattvamasya Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam, Sarvadi Sakshibhutam, Bhavatitam, Triguna Sadgurum Tam Namami, Narayanam Padmabhavam Vasishtam, Shaktim Chatat Putra Parasarancha, Vyasam Sukham Gaudapadam Mahantam, Govinda Yogindra Matasya Shisham, Sri Shankaracharya Matasya Padma, Padam Chahastamalakancha Shishyam, Tam Totikam Bhartika Karamanyan, Asmad Gurum Shantata Manatoshmihi, Vishwam Darpanadrishya Manyanagari, Tulyam Nijantargatam, Pasyanatmani Mayaya, Bhaivurivod, Bhutam Yata Nidraya, Yasakshat Kunte, Prabodha Samaye, Swatmanameva Dvayam, Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaida, Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om. Sada Shiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vivagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham Om. Sri Krishna Govinda Narayana. That invocation, Sadashiva, means it's an invocation of the lineage. So when we chant it, we put ourselves in the lineage, me as a teacher and you as a disciple or listener. And what it says is that in the very beginning, this knowledge came from the self. Sadashiva Samarambam. Shankaracharya, that's in the middle, about 1200 years ago. There was a great sage named Shankaracharya, and he's in the middle of the lineage. He basically made Vedanta very simple and clear, brought it all together, explained the whole science of Vedanta. And Asmad Acharya Paryantam, and down at the bottom of the heap is my guru. So the knowledge flows from the higher to the lower, cascades down to us now. So just by chanting that, it should put you in the listening state, and me in the teaching state, so that Ishwara can speak through me and listen through you. Then Ishwaro Guratmeti. Who is that Ishwar? Who is the Lord? Is Atma Guratmeti. The Guru is the Atman. What is the Atman? Your existence, consciousness, your essence. Ishwaro Guratmeti, Murti Beda Vibhagine, is beyond all forms and beyond duality. Vibhagine means other than, beyond. This Guru is beyond all forms and all duality. Murti Beda Vibhagine, Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya. And what? Beyond space and what? And the body. Space means space, time, and causality. Beyond all objects. Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya, Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Dakshinamurti is, Murti means a form or deity. Dakshinamurti is the deity, is the form of Shiva that brings the knowledge. Shiva, the self has many forms, and one of the forms is a bringer of knowledge. And Dakshinamurti is the form of Shiva that brings the knowledge. So it's an invocation to Dakshinamurti. Dakshinamurti means the one who sits in the north and looks at the south. The north symbolizes the self, which is static and frozen and unchanging, and the south symbolizes the world of objects, that which is decaying and constantly changing and moving. Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Then, Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta. The Siddhanta, what is the import or the meaning of all the teachings of Vedanta? Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta. The meaning is Gocharam Tamagocharam. It's beyond what you can see and what you can infer. Beyond what? Beyond the visible and the invisible. The invisible is the causal body. It's the world of potentiality that generates the objects that present themselves to your consciousness. Gocharam Tamagocharam. Govindam Paramanandam. That Govinda, that Go means light. So that what? That one that keeps the light. The place where the light is stored. The light means your consciousness or your essence. Govindam Paramanandam is what? Other nature of Paramanandam. That is steady, complete fullness or bliss. Govindam Paramanandam. Sadgurum, to that sat, to that reality, that existence, that isness, which is the Guru, Sadgurum Pranatosmiham. I surrender, I bow. So by chanting that and understanding the meaning of that, you prepare yourself for the study of the scriptures. That's the idea. And that should take care of the jiva personality and all the thoughts. Having said that, you know, it's hard to keep your mind from wandering. So we'll just proceed slowly through this and see what it has to say. This Upanishad is very interesting because it takes a different approach. It starts out with the same approach, but it branches off and takes a different approach. You see the chart here, how complicated it is? I mean, it seems to be very complicated, doesn't it? I have to spend an hour or two explaining all of the factors that are involved in reality. Reality being what? Consciousness plus the objects that present themselves to it. And moksha is not just knowledge of consciousness. In other words, freedom has not come about just because what you know of consciousness. Freedom comes about because you have complete knowledge, i.e. knowledge of satya, the self, consciousness, existence, and what? And the objects that present themselves to you. In other words, your experiences, all the things you experience. So, when you add the world or Maya to consciousness, you have a very, complex issue. And that teaching is called cause and effect, Sat Karya Vada. And it's for people who, are living in or have lived in this apparent reality for such a long time. That their whole thought system is conditioned by duality. So Vedanta is a very compassionate science insofar as it doesn't just dismiss this as unreal. We know it is unreal, but we don't just immediately dismiss it as unreal at all. In fact, we provisionally accept the reality of our own experience. This is an extremely important point. Because the modern teachers, in general, probably most of them, they basically dismiss experience in your object and all the objects appearing in it. And they just tell you, you are that. That's why Nisargadatta's book, I Am That, is so popular. You can, what do they call it? The pass, what do they call it? There's,
The direct path?
no, there's it's a bypass.
Spiritual bypass.
Huh? Spiritual bypass. So you spiritually bypass all this uncomfortable stuff. All this attractive, beautiful, sexy, interesting, painful shit that you have to do. You bypass that and you go right up to here, and supposedly, you know, all the problem solved. But of course, problem not solved. Because if you deny any part of yourself, all the ugly bits, if you deny any part of yourself, huh? And go ahead and realize the self, but I tell you, although ugly bits will come back and bite you later. Whether you like it or not, they're going to come up. Whether you're enlightened or not, they're going to come up. So we take ourselves seriously as human beings too, as objects in our awareness, in our consciousness. And we try to explain that. But now look, oh damn, I got up. Oh, I can't get up. So, yeah, just take these two here off, please.
These?
Yeah, those two. And then we just flip it around.
Okay.
Oh.
Now look at this chart. Look at how simple that chart is. Both charts are teaching the same thing, but the approach that we're taking here, let's see.
Should I put this on?
Yeah, just put one over. I think it's all right. There isn't much of a wind.
Just to hold it.
Just to hold it. So in this situation, we have a very simple chart. We only have 4 factors that we deal with, and if we can, that's why we call it the king of the Upanishads, because this rules the other. This idea rules the other teachings. Why? Because if we can understand this, we don't have to go through all of that other stuff. We don't have all that explanation. In other words, what we're going to do is negate the jiva as a self. All the teachings do that, but this does it in an extremely simple, extremely logical, and extremely intelligent way. It's if you have any belief that you're a jiva, an individual person, after you hear this teaching, you haven't heard the teaching properly, or at least you'll be able to recognize that jiva factor when it's appearing, when it's in charge. It's always appearing, but usually for people who don't know who they are, the ego is the one that is in charge of his or her life. And this teaching is going to shift the ego right from the subject into an object. Normally we think the ego is the subject. That's all, but it's not. We think the ego is the subject. Why? Because Maya has reversed the relationship between the self and the ego. And you don't know that's happened. All this takes place. Ignorance is unconscious. You don't know that the person you think you are is actually an object. You think the person that you think you are is the subject. But there's only one subject. And it appears as what? As a jiva or as an ego. So if we can dismiss this jiva or this ego, that's going to leave you as what? Existence, consciousness. Now if you're looking at everything, if you're looking at experience from this point of view, from the point of view of existence, consciousness, it's the self, here's existence, consciousness, that's you. If you look at it from this point of view, then all your problems disappear. They disappear almost as quickly as you identify yourself as the self. And even if they don't disappear completely, they're known to be unreal if you look at them from this point of view. And an unreal is an unreal problem a problem? Well, no, it's not. Problems are only problems because we think they're real. So what we're saying is that you don't have problems here. This Upanishad is saying you don't have problems here. We're saying you are the problem. See? The whole see the orientation. You don't have problems, you are the problem. So if we can get rid of the you that's the problem, then what happens to the problems? Because all the problems that I have depend upon who I think I am. And this is just a matter of thinking. There's nothing experiential you're going to do about this. Understand? There's no way you're going to change reality one iota, because Ishwar doesn't give a damn what you think. Reality is set up a certain way, and that's it. So, and it's going to do what it's going to do no matter what. So, all I can do is understand where I fit in the picture, or if the picture fits in me. Just who am I? Am I this experiencing entity, or am I what? That limitless ground of existence, consciousness, being that supports me, and all the objects that present themselves to my mind, intellect, and senses. So this teaching is very sophisticated, and there are various problems with it because it's such an interesting teaching and it's so profound. It should convince you also, incidentally, this teaching should convince you that the Vedanta is not a philosophy or a religion, that it's not cooked up by human beings. Because if you think you could figure this out on your own, then you're a genius beyond all geniuses. Nobody thought it up. Ishwar revealed it to these sages, and the sages were whatever sages they revealed it to were so overwhelmed by it they didn't even think of putting their name on it. They just called it the Frog Upanishad. And some of you probably know the reasons or the interpretations of the word frog, why they assigned the word frog to the Upanishad. Those of you who don't, you can try to figure it out as we unfold the teaching, because there's a couple of very cool explanations for this Upanishad. Our teaching is called Apurusheya Jnanam. It's a technical Sanskrit term, and it means what? Not from human beings. It doesn't come from us, it comes to us. It's heard. You don't hear things from inside, you hear things from outside. They come, it's a symbol. You don't see things inside, you see things outside. Well, yes, people see things inside too, but never mind that. The point is that this metaphor, in every metaphor you have some things are completely relevant, and there's always things about the metaphor that are not particularly relevant. But the idea here is that this didn't come from us, this came from Ishwar. So that's the point. So you can take it at face value. That's the point. You can't take what you think at face value. You shouldn't take what you think and feel at face value. You should inquire into it to see if what I think and feel actually corresponds with what? Reality. This you can take at face value. If this method reveals something to you, then you can accept that wholeheartedly without any doubt. Because it's the only agenda that Ishwara has is that suffering is bad. Does anybody disagree with that contention? That's our only bias. Okay, right now before we get started, I'm explaining our bias, and our bias is suffering is bad. Does anybody disagree? Please raise your hand. Good. See, nobody disagrees. So there's no objection to Vedanta whatsoever. And if you do like suffering, well then keep suffering. You won't show up here. You show up to this teaching because there's some sense of limitation and suffering that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. What feels natural is what? Freedom. What feels natural is wholeness, completeness. But we never try to get unfree when we feel free. We only try to get free when we feel unfree, isn't it? If you analyze every human activity is an attempt to do what? To remove a sense of subjective limitation. Understand? That's why we know that everybody's interested in freedom, because that's all people are doing 24/7, isn't it? If you think about it, every single thing you do, every action is motivated by a sense of limitation of one form or another. And by doing the action, you apparently remove that limitation. Like I was ready to teach, and then I realized I didn't have my glasses. Okay, so now I feel limited. I don't have my glasses. I could have toughed it out, but I didn't want to do it. So what did I do to remove that sense of limitation? I walked down to my trailer, fetched my glasses, and what? I came back here feeling what? Confident to teach. Why? Because I could see. Right? I didn't want the glasses for the glasses' sake. You never want the object for the object's sake. Nobody does. There are all these issues that are going on between people and so forth and so on are never about the issues. They're all about getting rid of a sense of what? Dissatisfaction that's disturbing your mind. And what? Robbing your bliss or your peace or your freedom. So the verse, this Upanishad, it's a small Upanishad. It only has 12 verses. And 3 of them are, well, maybe they're useful. We'll try to make use of them. I never found them particularly appealing, but I'm happy to teach them because that's my job. And maybe they'll work for you, and we'll give it a try maybe later on this morning if we get to those verses. It's only 12 mantras, and it needs to be taught, obviously. All these things need to be taught. You can read it, but you'll make a mistake. The most gross mistake that people have made that have read it didn't read it carefully. So when it talks about the self, it says, and the fourth, it says, it illuminates 3 factors: the waking, dream, and deep sleep state. And then it says, and the fourth. It doesn't say the fourth. It doesn't say the fourth state at all. There's just one word that's missing. But because it's been talking about the state so far, you assume that the fourth refers to a state. So people think that the fourth means a fourth state. So that means what? They think that they can access that state experientially, which you can. You can, apparently. You can access any state experientially because what? States are experiential, and the jiva, the doer, is an experiential entity, and so it's possible to access what you would think is a fourth state. Of course you can't, because there isn't a fourth state. There's a fourth factor, and that factor is what? Beyond any kind of actions, beyond any kind of approach, apart from knowledge. And knowledge is a very interesting approach because it doesn't give you what you got. It removes the obstacle to understanding what you have already. So when you try to read this, if you read this as a doer, you want to practice. Oh, I know now. I know what the fourth state is the self, and I'm going to experience the self. And how do I do that? I raise my kundalini and blow myself, get my jiva wiggle up the Sushumna and out the top of my head, and then I merge with the infinite consciousness and establish myself there, and I'm happy forever and ever, you know, till the blah, 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 blah. Well, how does that work for you? You know, it doesn't work, obviously. So the only access to this is what? By eliminating our misconceptions and our beliefs about what we're experiencing and about who it is that's experiencing these different states. So and then the bulk of this book is not the mantras of the Upanishad itself. It's an analysis of the mantras of the Upanishad. It's a particular kind of commentary that doesn't unfold every word of the Upanishad. Normally in our tradition, the traditional methodology is you take every single word in every single verse and you explain the meaning of every single word and how every single word relates to every other word in that mantra, and how every word in that mantra relates to all the other mantras that surround it before and after. It's a highly technical, highly, some say boring process. But here Gaudapada doesn't do that. Gaudapada just analyzes the meaning. He's not concerned about parsing the meaning of the words. He knows what the meaning of the Upanishad is. He understands the teaching, and he's going to analyze this teaching and give us a very interesting insight into the nature of this teaching. Going to show us what the limitation of this teaching is. And that's which is not to say that you can't gain moksha through the Satkarya Vada teaching, the cause and effect teaching. You definitely can. You do not need this teaching. But this teaching is definitely like the icing on the cake. Once you understand enough of the Vedanta and you hear this is really the essence of the teaching. So this is why we save it for last, and I've only started teaching it for the last year or two. Here and there, I've mentioned it many times. I've taught the Upanishad itself, but I haven't taught the Karika much, because most people were not qualified for it, and because I didn't want to confuse people. Yeah, so you have to understand that the relationship between the cause and effect teaching and the what, and the non-origination teaching. This teaching is called Ajati Vada, and it means what? Non-origination. And with the full meaning of that word non-origination, we will unfold carefully here. The most important chapter is the second chapter on the topic of Mityatvam, it's called. In other words, the seemingness of this creation. The reason it's important because this is not a seeming creation to us. This is a real creation for us. That's the issue. And that's why this chapter on the seemingness needs to be listened to carefully and cogitated upon deeply. Because the moksha is the only change that takes place when you understand the nature of yourself, of reality, is what? There's only one change. The status of the world changes. What does that mean? The status of the world changes. Previously, I thought that the world was real. Once I understand this teaching, I understand the world's not real. Different status. Before, real. After, not real. Now, what's the implication of knowing that it's not real? Think of, now that's a very interesting statement, blah, 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 but what does that imply for me as a jiva? That implies that what? The pursuit of any objects the avoidance or the pursuit or the avoidance of any objects here is totally what? Useless. Why? Because you're not going to get any real results. You're not going to get any real results by doing what you're doing. You're going to get apparent results, and apparent results are not very satisfying results. They're temporarily satisfying, for momentarily satisfying, but they're not satisfying. So moksha is what is going to neutralize this, what we call pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti is going towards objects, and what? And nivritti is going away from objects. Fear is going away, and desire is going toward objects. Attraction, repulsion, as they say in psychology, is the what? The neutralization of those two impulses in your mind. That doesn't mean the impulses don't arise. It means that the knowledge renders them impotent. Understand? We're not Buddhists here saying you've got to get rid of all your desires and fears. That's not our idea. Some people think, you know, as long as you have fears and desires, you can't be enlightened. But we totally disagree with that notion. All you need to do is appreciate in a fundamental and profound way that whatever I'm experiencing and pursuing and avoiding, what is not real. And that just, and when that hits, you relax for good. Understand? You relax for good. You go out and have a cup of tea, and everything's just wiped clean. It's like brand new. You just start out brand new once that knowledge is firm. Nothing bothers you from that point on. Nothing excites you, nothing turns you off. So everything's good then. Because without, you know, without the support of these apparent objects, what? I'm forced to fall back on my own self, which is the support of everything. I am the support of everything. So I relinquish the objects as a means of support, and I accept myself totally as that which supports everything. Which is just a state of what? Complete compassion, non-dual love, complete dispassion, right? And total satisfaction that we talked about last night. The goal is total satisfaction. So, you know, we need to eliminate the belief in the reality of objects, and he tries to do that, and it's a very simple way. It's very difficult. This is difficult teaching because it's so simple. You know, we want it all complicated. We want, you do this, you do that, and step by step, and then, you know, after all these lovely actions, then you get this result. But this is a very radical point of view, and it's one that, you know, I always say it right at the beginning of the teachings, and it goes over almost everybody's head right from the very beginning. And I know then I can understand how this ignorance working in people, because, anyway, we'll see. Okay, verse 1. The word Om is all this. Now, why do they say the word? Because if we're in this world, and we find ourselves as jivas in this world, we need some kind of symbols to help us work our way out of it. So reality, you, existence, consciousness, is going to appear as a symbol, as the word Om, or as in this case, a visual symbol. It's an audio representation. It's called Om, and what? And this is what? A visual symbol. This represents the waking state. This represents the what? The sleep state. I mean the dream state, and this represents the waking state. So whatever it is that what encompasses all those states is called Om. So we're using words. Vedanta is a word means of knowledge. It's a pramana. It uses the only thing we've got to go is what? Words. And the words backed by what? This particular kind of interesting logic elimination of non-essential variables in this case, in the form of this teaching. We're going to eliminate the non-essential variables, which is what? The three states. We'll see. So it says, Om, the word is all this. Then, a clear and complete exposition of it follows. And then, here's the exposition. Everything belonging to the past, present, and future is only Omkara. Om. Okay, the self. Call it the self. So everything belonging to the past, present, and future is only the self. Okay, anybody have a problem with that? Yeah, you probably should. We'll see. But now then, whatever, damn it, what happened to my pen? Keep finding little mistakes. Sorry, I shouldn't waste your time, but thank you. Whatever is beyond the three periods of time is also Omkara. So, do you know there's something beyond the three periods of time? Do you know?
Awareness.
Yeah, well, some of you do, but most people they don't think there's anything beyond time, do they? That jiva part of yourself, isn't that jiva part of yourself totally conditioned by time? Doesn't it think that everything, single thing that happens in time? Yeah, it does. So very few jivas understand that there's something beyond time. Because time just represents what? It represents the apparent reality, doesn't it? It represents the senses, the mind, and the intellect, and the unconscious. All of these things are what? Are constantly changing. Because they are changing, then we have this concept of time. Or because they're apparently changing, we have this concept of time. Time being what? Simply the interval between what? An experience and the result of that experience. Understand? This is where the stress comes in with the karma yoga and all that. Karma yoga is just because everybody's stuck in time. That's why we have karma yoga. It's the solution for the time problem. Why Eckhart Tolle actually is talking karma yoga when he talks about the power of now, because the power of now is what? Is getting away from time. And you don't get away from time by what? By getting away from time. You get away from time by understanding the nature of what? Of the self. Because the self's free of desire, so there's no time for the self. Okay. So time is just an interval. There is, and it's totally, completely subjective. There's no real thing called time, is it? If you're in an Iraqi prison and they're torturing you, how long does 3 minutes of torture, while they're pulling out your fingernails, how long does that feel? Yeah, it feels like forever. A couple of seconds of that kind of intense pain feels like forever, much less minutes or hours of that kind of torture. When you're listening to Ramji teach Vedanta, where's the time? No time, right? Why? Because you're enjoying. The object and the subject are not separate. It's all happening in the now, in the present. And what? And there's no sense of time. You're focused, you're so forth. So now, whatever's beyond them is also Omkara. So that means what? To understand reality, as I just said earlier, I said we have to understand what is in time and what's beyond time. Om, the self, is beyond time, and what? And the three states are what? In time. They're time bound. It says, normally when we teach Vedanta, and so it says here, Om, the word is all this. Usually when we're talking about, we use the word this in Vedanta, we usually refer to all the objects that present themselves to it. This is why the modern teachers, the this Babas, they refer to the self as this, because it's not the self that they're experiencing, it's the Sattva Guna. So when Sattva Guna comes, they think that's enlightenment, and so they say this is it, and they discount what the one that knows the this. Well, the one that knows the this, and because this implies what? Time, doesn't it? If you say this, it implies that something went before, doesn't it? So what went before? Well, I was in a confused Tamasic state, and now that I'm in the presence of the great teacher, my mind gets sattvic, and now I'm experiencing this. So time. So this implies time, but in this case, this implies what? Both time and the timeless. So we're talking about the whole big picture here. Time and timelessness. We're not separating the two. Okay. Verse 2. And then he says, all this, both what's timeless and in time, it is what? Is indeed limitless existence consciousness. We have to go through, we have to explain these two words, existence, consciousness. Why? Because there's two words. But those two words, what do? Do they refer to two different things? Normally a word, you have a word, and you say, have one word, it refers to one thing, but it doesn't, and another word doesn't refer to the same thing in general. Synonyms do refer to the same thing. But these words are synonyms, existence and consciousness. And why are they synonyms? Why do they both refer to the same thing? Because what? You don't exist unless you know you exist. Does anybody have an argument with that? You don't exist unless you know you exist. Do you think your existence is what? Is independent of your knowing? Is it an independent factor? And I see some tentative right answers, but no, because actually the words are confusing, aren't they? What you think existence refers to one thing, and you think consciousness refers to another thing. Two different words, it must be referred to two different things. Now what we say no, and here's the reason. Here's the reason why existence and consciousness are what? Are the same thing. What? Do you exist if you don't know you exist? No. Isn't it?
Yes.
No object exists independent of knowledge of an object. In this case, the self is the subject, but it's the same for the self. Try to think of an object independent of consciousness, independent of the knowledge of the object. Can you think of one? No, you can't. I know it's a hard concept. Nobody can think of an object without what? I mean, an object doesn't exist unless consciousness exists, isn't it? Knowledge of the object equals consciousness, because you can't have what? You can't have knowledge without consciousness. So the knowledge of an object equals the consciousness of the object. Okay. So now, can you know you exist unless you exist?
No.
Huh? No, you can't, can you? You can't know you exist unless you exist, can you? Now that means what? that existence is consciousness and consciousness is existence. There's no difference. It's similar to the chicken and the egg conundrum. In other words, there's no time here. In the chicken and the egg story, there's no time, is there? Huh? Huh? Think about it. When you consider a chicken and an egg, where's the time? The reason there's no time is because you say, well, the chicken had to think, I want an egg to make an egg. So the chicken came first and the egg came second. But can you have a chicken without an egg? So what? So the chicken was preceded by an egg, wasn't it? Huh? So which one, where did it start? Did it start with the chicken or did it start with the egg? I'm unclear. Well, it didn't start. That's the point. That's what non-origination means. There is no origination here. There is no beginning. There is no creation happening here at all. Why? Because existence and consciousness are not two different things. They're both the same things. They're just two different words. However, it appears that they're different. This is why we have such a hard time when I say, is there an object? Can you know an object, or does an object exist without the knowledge of the object? And everybody, you really have to think hard about that, don't you? Because it certainly seems like objects stand apart from me, the knower, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like that? Doesn't it seem like that tree stands apart, is independent of me, the one that knows it? This is the tree in the forest, the sound and all that. That solipsism, that argument that went on in the Middle Ages, is still, I guess, debated in the academic circles or whatever. Okay, so when we use existence and consciousness, we're talking about you, the same thing, just one. And what? And this self is limitless, is existent, limitless existence consciousness. So what has he done in this one? He's equated the self with existence consciousness. Okay. So now, then what is he says? The next, now it's a very interesting statement. See what's wrong with this statement. The self has 4 quarters. Now, in the context of that, of those words there, there's a problem, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because if something's limitless, how can it have quarters? Huh? I'm exposing the problems with the teaching here. And it's not really a problem, but if you read it carefully, you got a problem here. Well, if it's limitless, it has no, then how can you divide it up into 4 sections? Well, we have to divide it up into 4 sections. Why? Because we think we're this waking state entity. We think our existence is limited to what? The waker or the dreamer. Most of us don't even include the deep sleeper in our identity, do we? You do, linguistically, you say, I slept. But actually you don't, you actually think you're not there when you're sleeping, don't you? Huh? Because I know most people do, because when I say, what are you experiencing when you're deep sleep, most people say nothing. Huh? But you don't experience nothing here at all. Yeah, Susan.
Stuck. I'm stuck. The chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
My understanding of it is that it happened simultaneously, chicken and egg, not that it never happened at all.
Well, okay, then it apparently happens simultaneously, but
Okay.
the chicken and egg is not about what happens, it's about removing your ignorance about consciousness. In other words, we're not interested in what happens, because this teaching is nothing ever happened. This is your nothing ever happened teaching. Understand? Huh? This is where all these guys got all this fancy stuff they're teaching nowadays. Huh? Huh? But they never were taught it. They read it and they made implications and interpretations based upon the nature of their mystical experiences. So they came up with the ultimate conclusion, which is the I am consciousness and so forth and so on. But that's all they got out of it. It's basically, yeah, which is not enough. You need to know why nothing ever happened, and then we let what happens be what happens, which is nothing.
Nothing.
But it's not nothing. Why is it not nothing?
No.
Why is what is happening not nothing?
Because it's with you.
Well, because you experience it.
Right.
You experience the world in the body here, don't you?
Yeah.
So you can't experience something that doesn't exist, can you?
No.
You can only experience something that exists. So the world exists all right,
Yeah.
and no doubt about that, huh? But is it real?
Yeah.
See, our whole issue is the world real or not? As I said, the point here is to change our relationship to the world, or change the world's relationship to us. By understanding that it is not real. Yes, it exists. And our view is, because we've been born in ignorance, is what? That whatever we're experiencing is real.
Yeah.
Well, whatever we're experiencing is real, but whatever we're experiencing is not an object called the world. Whatever we're experiencing is real. It's constantly experienced by what? It's the eternal subject, the I. He's going to see that. He's going to say that in a couple minutes here. He's going to say that. So.
And practically speaking, you can't negate the world anyway. You still have to deal with it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's the
Well,
bottom line.
you deal with it as a negated object.
Yeah.
That,
right. Right.
In other words, yeah, you have to deal with it, but it's very different to deal with it if you think it's a movie than if you
Yeah.
think it's real,
That's
isn't
right.
it?
That's right. Yeah.
So the negation is the big issue here, and
Yeah.
negation doesn't come about in any experience or way. It just comes about by understanding that the objects are not real, and therefore what? Therefore, there's no. I have no pravritti or nivritti. I have no attraction toward them. I have no repulsion toward them. I take all of my meaning from my own self, from the wholeness and completeness, the bliss, the eternal experience of Anandam that I am. So that's the idea. So, okay, so he's dividing up. He's for the purposes of teaching. That's all this is, for the purposes of teaching. So we don't want to get too hung up on the details. I fudge the details a little bit. And you know, I get criticized for fudging a little bit, but I always expose my fudges, and because we're not trying to get worldly knowledge here. That's not the purpose. You don't want to study Vedanta and think you're going to learn Vedanta. You can't study Vedanta and learn Vedanta. Vedanta is about you. So I don't need to know. When I start talking about the 5 elements and the Panchakarana theory of how the elements divide and recombine, people get they cream their jeans, as they say. Some people do. They just want to know it all, and they want to know exactly how that works and what the formula is, and then work it all out. In the Guna charts, we can do that, but we're not going to do that here. People get fascinated. They love that, the complexity of it, and they think, oh, if I understand that I'm a leg up. But you aren't really a leg up. Understand? So, anyway, so now he's going to now what are we going to do? We're going to what? What time is? Do we?
About
Oh,
10:30.
we done an hour?
Yeah.
Jesus, where's the time going? I gotta talk faster.
That's a good pace.
I talk faster.
Speed
Bring
teaching.
me another coffee.
Speed teaching.
You're kind of perky today, I noticed. Last night I was. Today, kind of perky. Okay. Yeah, everybody looks pretty good. Does anybody need a break? Huh?
Bathroom.
Yeah, we have bathroom break or anything like that? Okay.
We got a couple.
What? Bathroom break? Okay, take a break and we'll come back in 20 minutes or so.